I am so pleased to have Samuel Johnson with me here. I've been trying to track down Samuel Johnson to get him on the podcast for a while now. He has a lot of great information around energy, health, fitness, so many things to talk about. But first of all, I also want to hear his story because more than anything, I think he has a remarkable story. So we're going to dive into that in just a minute. But first of all, Sam, tell everyone kind of who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Doug. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to be able to jam with you here today. And ultimately, I own a business called Travel Fitco. And what we do is we specialize in high performance management for entrepreneurs and high performers. So high performance management, what that means is really helping people manage their energy, manage their stress, their sleep, health, and fitness, really like the whole holistic side of your lifestyle to make sure that the output that you have in your business or in your career is able to be sustained. So ultimately, we just help people make sure that they have what they need to be able to fuel the output that they have in their business or career and not burn out.
Nice. Something very, very needed for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Before we dive into your story, I always like to ask just a few questions just for the audience to kind of get to know you a little bit more outside of your expertise and your story. So one of those questions is, what is something that you think is overrated?
What is something that I think is overrated? I think a lot of things are overrated. However, as it would relate, I'm gonna stay in the lane because I feel like I go a lot of different directions with this. I'm gonna stay in the lane of what we're going to be talking about today. I think what is super overrated, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs, are neurotropics, which are essentially supplements that people will take to help improve focus and mental clarity. And I think they're overrated because a lot of them really come in different blends. They're not dosed correctly, and they are not going to solve the root problems that are causing lack of focus and lack of productivity and lack of mental sharpness. So that's definitely what I think is overrated.
Oh, wow. I think that was key. That was awesome. So what do you think is underrated?
I think walking is underrated.
Wow.
Walking is underrated, especially from a productivity and energy management standpoint. I think a lot of people look past walking because it's something that we do every single day. It comes natural to us. But to be honest with you, if there's one habit that I can get anybody to do, and if there's one thing you're going to take away from this podcast, we'll just put it right in the beginning, it would be to begin walking daily. And if you're going to walk daily, my suggestion would be to do that in the morning and do it between the hours of like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. That way you're able to get sunlight at the same time, because that's going to help trigger circadian rhythms and lead to more wakefulness. And then if you can also do it after you eat, especially if you struggle with afternoon energy drops, if you can do it after you eat, it's one of the most effective ways to maintain energy and get rid of the afternoon energy drop.
Wow. Nice. I'm going to put some of these things into practice myself because when I get up in the morning, I start doing my planning, I do some reading, etc. I don't really get out. Sometimes if it's nice outside, I'll take the book outside and read, right? But I'm still not active. I'm still sitting and reading, and I'm not getting getting physical, for lack of a better term, right? So that's awesome. So I also want to know what kind of music you listen to or what you listen to while you're working out. So what's currently on your playlist while you work out?
A wide variety of music. So to be honest with you, sometimes I listen to music, sometimes I don't. It really just depends on what kind of mood I'm in. For the most part, when I work out, I'm either listening to Christian rap or worship music, or sometimes I'll go back to like my 2000s screamo days and like hardcore days. So that would probably be a majority of what is on my workout playlist at the moment.
Did you have a favorite Christian rapper?
Yeah, probably Canon.
Okay, nice. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
nice.
He's amazing.
All right, now this I've heard tidbits of your story here and there by following you. Now I want for you to dive into that because I really think it's a remarkable story and something that will resonate with a lot of our audience. So if you, I know it's a long story. You don't have to share it all, but share like your path, right? Where you started and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I'll give the cliff notes. That way we don't take up the entire time just talking about my past. So long story short, I grew up in a broken home, just like a majority of us do, and lived in chaos my entire life. And my father was a drug addict, and that eventually took his life when I was 22 years old. So at the end of 2015, I lost him to a heroin overdose. And growing up, I watched the consequences and the chaos of that drug addiction essentially just rip my family apart. And so on top of that, I became addicted to pornography at about 5 years old. And then once I started having sex as a teenager, I became addicted to sex. And in 8th grade, smoked my first joint. 6th grade, got drunk for the first time, and was essentially on and off with drugs and alcohol, depending on which one you're talking about, for almost 12 years as well. So needless to say, my childhood and my teenage years were a bit chaotic, pretty wild. At the same time, I started in the health and fitness industry at 18 years old. So I started in the supplement industry and worked in there for 2 years, and then became a trainer and worked as a trainer for 7 years in person. And always had this dream of starting my own business and working specifically with high performers, especially people that travel for a living, because for some reason, my clientele in person was either entrepreneurs, salespeople that travel for a living, or C-level executives. Those were the main 3 people that I worked at. I did have some general population come in here and there, but a majority of my clientele was focused around people that were just really living a busy on-the-go lifestyle, and people that were really focused on growing professionally. And so that's where the idea of Travel Fit Co was born, which is essentially a business that is created, like the mission behind our business is to change the way that health and business coexist, because I think that a lot of people think they have to sacrifice their health, or even if they don't think that, they naturally do sacrifice their health just for the sake of professional growth. And especially if you want to grow really, really fast, something's going to have to take the back seat. And so my goal and my mission with that business is to really teach people how to have both. Right now, I don't coach business, but I've worked with 7, 8, 9-figure earners, and I've seen the ins and outs of how a lifestyle like that works, especially with a family. And so what I've done over the years is work to create systems, not programs, but I've created systems and philosophies that people can adapt into their lifestyle that allow them to continue to push without burning into the ground. So that's the short story of how I've gotten to where I'm at today.
Wow. I have a couple follow-up questions to that weren't on my plan, but because Travel Fit, right? So I'm thinking of when I travel, like I have a pretty good routine down, right? But it all goes out the window when I travel, right? The type of food that I eat doesn't remain like what it was when I was in my routine. I don't work out, so I guess my question is, do you see that a lot with people that come on as new clients with you, and is that something that you help them with? And kind of what are some ways that you help them stay in a routine?
Yeah, I would say probably 10 out of 10 people struggle with traveling. And it's actually interesting. What you'll find is that some people can maintain routines while they're on the road. It's actually coming back from a trip that a lot of individuals will tend to struggle with, because you've gotten out of routine and now finding yourself back into a flow can be a little bit difficult. And so one of my biggest recommendations that I make for people that come in that travel for a living, or they just attend business masterminds, or maybe you go to conferences regularly, or even if it's just a vacation here and there. One of the biggest things that I recommend is finding your biggest dominoes in terms of the habits that give you the most benefit for your investment, right? So maybe for you, one of those things is doing a daily walk. And then maybe one of those things is doing some breath work at night and then stretching. Okay, so if those are the 3 things that you feel like really allow you to stay in your flow, then let's only focus on those 3 for the trip. But then how do you scale them to match your schedule? Because what a lot of people will do, and one of the big reasons that we get out of routine, is because we try to take a habit that's designed for a specific environment or circumstance. So if you just take the amount of time in a workout, right? Maybe you work out for 60 minutes on a daily basis when you're in your normal flow. Well, if you're traveling to a conference or a business mastermind or some sort of event, the odds of you being able to have 60 to 75 minutes to work out is probably slim to none. So what we do is you just scale that behavior down. So we have to learn how to adapt our behaviors, habits, and routines to the given circumstances of our lifestyle. And that's the gap. A lot of people try to fit a round peg into a square hole when it comes to their habits and routines whenever the environment changes. And so before you leave, if you can step back and say, okay, hey, what are the main 3 things that I'm going to continue to do on this trip? And how do they need to be scaled down and or up to make sense for the schedule and given circumstances of the trip that I'm going to be on? That's going to allow you to be able to stay in flow. And especially when you get back, you'll be able to just circle right back to where you were at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because like when you go to a conference or something, you're just like, well, there's no way I have an hour, so I'm just going to skip it. So rather than skip it, you keep the habit. It's just trimmed down.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And even if it's literally just 10 minutes of doing squats and push-ups, just do it. It's not about making progress towards your goal. It's about keeping routine and keeping your word to yourself most of all. And so I think a lot of people think, well, it's 10 minutes. What's the difference between me doing 10 minutes or not doing 10 minutes? Well, the difference is you're honoring your word, you're keeping consistency going, and you're depositing into yourself. And when you're traveling, there's a lot being taken out of you. Your energy is being sucked out of you, especially if you're learning and you're growing at a conference or a mastermind. And so that's what it's about. It's not about making progress towards your goal. It's about being consistent.
Yeah, I think people often forget how many calories your brain burns, right?
Yeah.
It's not just physical activity. If you're really using your brain a lot, it burns a lot of calories as well. So
100%.
So now let's dive in. You said that you work with a lot of high level 6, 7, even 8. I think you said 7, 8, and 9 figure business owners. Now tell me why it's especially important for someone in that space to focus on their fitness and their health overall.
I think one of the most important reasons for any high performing individual, let's just remove the income aspect out of it. And if you own a business and or you are pushing for more and you're pushing for growth in your career and in your personal life, I think one of the most important reasons that you want to focus on this is because it gives you a sense of control and confidence and certainty, right? So those are the 3 C's: control, confidence, and certainty. And I think that when you find a high performing individual that's missing one of those 3 things or multiple of those, that's when you can have somebody that can be pretty inconsistent. And so what I have found is a lot of people that perform at a high level don't have control over their health. They have control over their business. They have control over their career, but they don't have control over their health. And guess what? Then that hits their confidence because they start questioning themselves. They start doubting themselves. They might not talk about it and they might not show it because they're so confident in their professional life, but it's affecting them on the inside, right? Because you have to look yourself in the mirror every day and realize that you're falling short of what you say you actually want, which then makes you a little bit more uncertain. And all it takes is a little bit when it comes to performing at a high level for you to start to slip and you not to show up at your best as a leader. And so I think that's one of the most important reasons, is because it's going to allow you to be confident, certain, and have more control. And when you have those three things, it will change the way that you show up. It will change the way that you show up on a meeting or walk into a room. People will notice a difference about you. It's not that you look great because you lost 20 pounds. It's because your chest is up a little bit higher. Your chin's up a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest reasons I think it's important.
I always like to have meetings after I've gone to the gym because I have that adrenaline, I have that confidence. And now that I never really thought about it in that light, but that is probably why, right? Because I'm in a peak state. And yeah, that's awesome. So another thing I want to ask you about is, I know you help a lot with energy, helping entrepreneurs with their sleep. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit as well?
Yeah, so I'll hit the energy piece first and then we'll go into sleep. So I always like to talk about energy in terms of a bank account, okay? So just like a bank account, you can make deposits and withdrawals. You also do the same thing with your energy because you have an energy account. Well, when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially if you're leading a team and you're growing a business, or even if you're just a solopreneur, you are spending unbelievable amounts of energy every single day. Every single minute you are spending energy. And so when it comes to energy management, we have to learn how to balance, because what happens is most high performers, they love to redline, right? Because we're like Ferraris. And if you get in the driver's seat of a Ferrari, you're going to want to push that car to the limit. You're going to want to redline it on the RPMs. And that's what people do in their professional life. And so if you continue to do that over and over and over again for months or weeks or even years, what's going to happen is the engine's going to blow at some point. And so what I often see with a lot of high performers is their output is up here with their performance and work. Okay, so they're spending tons of energy. There's a ton of stress, a lot that they're carrying on their shoulders, but then the input is down here. Right? So maybe you get a workout in every day, but then you don't drink enough water because you're too busy and you're on your back-to-back calls and you don't want to have to go to the bathroom. Or maybe you forget to eat lunch. It happens all the time. And so what happens is when our input is down here and our output is up here, over time we start pouring out from an empty cup. And so as you start to do that more and more and more, a lot of times what happens, there's a lot of underlying symptoms and impacts that has on our health, right? So if you are under an immense amount of stress and you're not feeding yourself well and you're not even doing the basics of hydrating, it's going to take a toll on your body. Maybe you start to have digestive issues, right? Maybe you develop stomach ulcers. I mean, this is real life stuff that happens to people and they don't even realize it, right? And they wonder why they feel bad. So from an energy perspective, one of the biggest things that we want to do is we want to learn how to begin to close the gap with the output and the input. And so one of the best ways that I like to teach entrepreneurs and high performers to do that is with micro deposits, right? So rather than getting a high ticket sale, for example, where you're getting that $9,800 PIF, right? What we want to do is we just want to make little $1,000 deposits every hour, right? So if that is getting 8 ounces of water, if it's standing up and doing 5 squats, if it's just taking 3 deep breaths in between each one of your Zoom meetings, or walking down the hall in your office and then walking back, rather than sitting for 6 or 7 hours, that's going to be one of the best ways to begin to close that gap as you're pouring out and you're pouring out and you're pouring out. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons that I got a standing desk a long time ago, is because I knew I was sitting for like 8 hours a day. And a standing desk not only allows me to stand, I feel more free to walk away, right? And to walk around, like, yeah, so awesome. It makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. So then you mentioned sleep. So I'm going to come at this from a little bit of a different angle. I think that from a sleep perspective, sleep is one of the best habits that you can develop, but also so is other forms of rest. And I think one of the big things that high performers miss is focusing on other forms of rest besides sleep. And what I mean by that is doing things that are fun. Doing things that you love that have nothing to do with work. Because as you spend and spend and spend energy, that's taking a toll on you, like we just talked about. And a lot of times we feel so trapped as we're growing a business or we're leading a team, and we have so many things going on in our lives that we end up not having any time for ourselves. And so if there's one thing that I can encourage people to do, and especially when I have people that come in that are really feeling like they're on the verge of burnout, or maybe they are burnt out, whether or not you agree that you can burn out doesn't matter, right? The reality is that there's a lot of people that don't feel good, right? You're exhausted, you're not inspired, you're not motivated. One of the things I try to start to teach people right out of the gate is how we can build time into their calendars, both professionally and personally, to do things that they love, that get them excited. So like one of those things for me is going on walks, but another is playing the drums. And so I want to make sure that I'm scheduling those activities into my calendar because it brings excitement and it brings joy into my life. So it's really important to schedule rest. Now, on the sleep side of things, one of the most important aspects of sleep for an entrepreneur or a high performer is being able to think. So a crazy statistic when it comes to sleep is if you go 6 hours or less for 2 weeks straight sleeping, if you're running on 6 hours of sleep for 2 weeks, then you are operating as if you have the blood alcohol content of somebody that's illegally drunk.
Wow.
And so the thing that I always tell people is if you are not sleeping, and again, everybody operates off different levels of sleep. My sweet spot is 7 hours and 15 minutes or 7 hours and 20 minutes, right? I've tracked it long enough to know exactly, like I just feel like a freaking king when I sleep right in that little spot. Some people might be like 6 hours and 45 minutes. Some people will argue, well, I can go with 5. I mean, that's probably true, but there's a lot of science that would also argue against that. And so from a sleep perspective, it's your ability to be able to think and make decisions and have creativity. And so when you prioritize sleep and you prioritize rest, it's going to make you more creative. You're going to be able to solve problems better. You're going to be able to communicate better. You're not going to be as irritated easily. You're going to be able to adapt to the stress that's going on in your career a lot better.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
that's why the sleep's important.
Yeah, I remember early on pulling the all-nighters and then sleeping till noon the next day and then doing it again.
Yep.
And really running on that like 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And it wasn't really until I met my wife and she said, she actually coached me on this, believe it or not. She's like, you'd be more productive if you actually slept for 7 to 8 hours. And
yeah,
lo and behold.
And you are, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just a quick story. When I was in my early 20s, I was in school. So this is probably like right around like 19 or 20 years old. I was in school full-time, 40 hours a week. And I was also working about 60 or 70 hours a week. And then I was in a relationship. And so my days would be on Mondays and Wednesdays, it'd be 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then I would do homework. And then I would try to spend time with my girlfriend at the time. So I was sleeping like 3 or 4 hours a night. And for almost 12 years of my life, I ran off 4 to 6 hours of sleep. And I look back at that period of time in my life, and I cannot tell you the difference that it makes now where I'm sleeping somewhere between 7 to 8 hours a night, the difference in my emotional health, my relationships, how I show up, and I'm able to deposit into other people. And the consequences and the toll that took on my health, especially my mental health and my emotional health, were unbelievable. And so a lot of times for high achievers, because there's so much going on in our schedules, there's so many things that we feel like we have to do, we feel like we have to sacrifice our sleep, right? And even when you do try to prioritize it, maybe you lie down at night and you can't turn your brain off. The first thing that you think about when you lie down in bed is everything that you didn't get done and everything you have to do tomorrow. And so maybe it could be good for us to talk about some habits that people can develop before they go to bed to be able to turn it off. Because that's one of the biggest things that I have to work with on people is like, hey, stop working. Even if you're not physically working, you're still working in your head.
Yeah, let me ask you about this because I've heard it said like a lot of people will say, you know, plan your next day at the end of the previous day, journal at the end of your previous day. It almost feels like what you're saying is kind of don't do that, because then that gets your brain firing again, right? So talk about that a little bit, or talk about some other habits that people can do.
So if I communicated that, I apologize. I actually do support that big time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. You did not
So
communicate that. I said that.
okay. So yeah, I think so. Everybody's different, right? And so one of the big things that you have to do early on when you are developing routines and you're working on yourself is experiment. And I think a lot of times we just get married to tools as if they're rules. And so one thing that I just want to say for any high performer out there is any behavior, habit, routine, supplement, biohack, quote unquote, that you can do, they're all tools. They're not rules. And it can be really easy to get married to certain things that may not work well for us. So experiment and only try one or two things at a time. Right? So if you walk away from this and you're like, okay, hey, he mentioned 7 or 8 different things that I can do, pick 1 or 2 of them and just do them for 2 weeks and see how it changes you. Because if you try to do everything at once, you're not going to be able to extract attribution and know what worked and what didn't. So anyways, when it comes to turning off at night, one of my big things that I work on with our clients is transitions. How can we get you to transition from your professional life to your personal life and turn it off, quote unquote, leave it at the office? And so I 100% agree that you should definitely plan your next day. So one thing that I do is I do an end of day journal. And that end of day journal is essentially, it's done in an app called Day One. I love that app. It's awesome. 10 out of 10 recommend using it if you're okay with typing. But if you like to write, then write. So for me, what I've found that works well is I go back from the beginning of the day, from the point that I woke up all the way up until the time that I am journaling. I will go through the entire day, everything that happened. How did I feel? Who did I interact with? What did I do? What did I not do? What were the conversations that I had? What ideas did I have? So I just go straight through the day. And then I do a series of prompts. What was one win? What was one lesson? What's a pivot or an opportunity that I have that I can make tomorrow that's going to help me move towards where I want to be at? And what am I grateful for? So I always do an end of day journal. And then I will adjust my calendar for the next day. Now that word adjust is really important because I have my calendar set out at the beginning of the week. And so sometimes what can happen is people will plan and adjust their days at the beginning and at the end of the day. And so if you're sitting down to work and you don't have a plan for the day, you're missing the mark. And the same thing is if you don't have that next day planned already and it's Thursday, you're missing the mark there too. So that's where we have to reverse engineer. And on the weekends, just get a map of what you want to do, right? And then you can go in and make tweaks to your calendar for what there is to do. And then this will be the last thing that I recommend is there's got to be a transition point. There's got to be a transition period between work and personal life. And so you want to experiment. One of my favorite things to do, and I know we're going into winter, one of my favorite things to do is I go on a no tech walk. So if you get home, what I do is I go inside, I leave all my tech in the house, and I go outside on a 10-15 minute walk. I let my mind wander, I listen to the birds, I look at nature, whatever it is. But that creates a really good separation point for me. And maybe going on a walk is not possible because you have family or you have kids that you have to attend to. Then what I would recommend is leave your phones in the office or put them in the bathroom. Disconnect. And you have to create boundaries at night because a lot of times we leave the office, or maybe you walk out of your office that you work at home, which is even harder. And you're still checking email and you're still checking Slack, you're still checking social media at 7, 8 o'clock at night. So we have to develop some boundaries and honor those boundaries that allow us to stay disconnected from work if we're going to do these transitions. So the last thing I'll recommend is using a totem and doing some sort of identity switch. So maybe there's like a watch that you put on whenever you start work. And when you put that watch on, that's when you go into work mode. That's when you go into high performer business owner mode. But then when you get home, you take that off. One of my clients, he used to have 2 necklaces, right? I can't remember what kind they were, but like one was like a Superman necklace and then one was some other necklace. And so he had a necklace for work. And then when he would be done with work, he'd take that work necklace off and then he'd put his husband and his father necklace on. And then he'd go about his evening. So working on creating those transitions in between your personal and your professional life is going to be huge.
That's super smart. And my office is at home, right? Me and my wife both work from home. And as you were saying this, I just thought, how often is the office door in our house left open when work is done, right? That's inviting work back in. But just as simple as closing the door so that if you were started to walk back to the office, oh, wait, it's closed, right?
Yeah, it's done. Like you are done for the night.
Yeah. So yeah, those are some awesome tips, and I hope the audience really picked up on those. I really love the idea about the totem, about switching your persona, right, of who you are at that time. You're no longer someone. You're no longer the business person. You're the father. You're the husband.
Yeah.
Or the wife. You know, we have female listeners as well.
100%.
Wife or mom. So very, very good. Sam, it's been awesome having you on the podcast today. Do you where do people go to find out more about you? What do you have to offer? Just let everybody know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so the best place that you can find me, obviously on Facebook, if you're in this group, watching on the group, but if you're watching, listen back on the podcast, Facebook, Instagram, my Instagram handle, TikTok, and Twitter. All 3 of those are at SAMMY GFit, Sammy G Fit. So that's the best place to follow me. I'm probably most active on Facebook and Instagram at the moment. You can find our website, www.travelfitco.com, and our YouTube channel is named that as well. And in terms of what we offer, we essentially we have 2 offers at the moment. So for a high performer that's looking to just get their health back, really on the fitness and the nutrition side, we have a group program. It's 12-week long that a lot of people will go through, but it's not where we just like give you a meal plan and we give you a workout plan and say, see you later. We really teach you the fundamental habits that you can ingrain into your lifestyle that are going to allow you to prioritize movement and prioritize nutrition. So that's our 12-week virtual group coaching program. And then we have a 6-month performance, productivity, and purpose program. And so what we do inside of that is we do cover the health and the nutrition in that program, but this is really focused on helping people get their energy back, get their excitement back, create a vision for themselves, become more productive so they can get more done in less time and have more time back to be able to do things in their life that they want to do, which is one of my favorite things to coach. So I spend a lot of time, and that's more of a hands-on approach where we kind of walk that out with you across the 6 months.
Nice. One more question regarding that. So who is your ideal client for those offers?
Yeah, so for both offers, really, the ideal client is typically going to be, it could be male or female, doesn't matter. We work with both. I know we talk about niching down, but I love to help male and female. And the ideal person is going to be somebody that is in a high performing career or that is a business owner. So you're probably working long hours. You're likely waking up feeling tired. Maybe you feel a bit exhausted, or maybe you wake up with energy, but then 12, 1 or 2 o'clock comes around and you got nothing left inside of you. And on top of that, maybe you're struggling with your productivity, you're struggling with your focus, you feel like you don't have time for yourself, and there's no way that you can figure out how to become consistent with your health, with your nutrition, and you feel like there's no way out. So those are really going to be that's going to be the person that we tend to work best with, is somebody that's really wanting to prioritize themselves and that's ready to go all in on making themselves a priority. And the thing I'll say about that is, a lot of times what happens is, especially for high achievers, we think that to prioritize ourselves, we have to put the business or the career to the side, and that's not the case. right? Because ultimately, attention is your greatest asset. It's not time, it's attention, what you give your attention to. And so what we do is we help people learn how to reprioritize their attention. And so it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go from working 12 hours to 7 hours. If I have somebody that likes to work 12 hours, cool, then work 12 hours. But where are you giving yourself time? And how do we work that into your day-to-day? So.
Nice, nice. So it sounds like you customize what you do kind of to where they're coming in at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again,
awesome.
like we focus more on systems, not programs, right? That's a big differentiator. Is it can be one thing for you to just you can download a workout program anywhere. Like it's not rocket science. Like just Google search workout program and you'll find one. What we do is we help people create systems and build their own personal toolbox so they know what tools to use and when to use them for where they're at in their career and their personal life.
That is awesome. Thanks once again, Sam. And any parting words for our entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say if there's one thing that I could leave you with is that you are worth depositing into. You are worth depositing into, and you are worth the attention and the energy that you want to give yourself. And if you feel like you have no time for yourself because everybody else needs something from you, just know that as you begin to give back more to yourself, you'll be able to give more to others, right? One of my favorite quotes from Jim Rohn, he said, "I'll take care of me for you so long as you take care of you for me." And a lot of us get that backwards, right? We don't take care of ourselves because we feel like we have to take care of everybody else, right? And that's exactly why you'll hear people on airplanes say to put your mask on first. You have to give yourself oxygen first, because if you're suffocating, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So if you don't feel like you're worthy of it, you are, and just start small and make it priority.
Yeah. A lot of people think you're not being selfish. You're actually being unselfish by taking care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. That's awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you so much. And this has been an amazing value-filled interview. Until next time, Trailblazers, keep moving forward.